Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of my video blog. Today I'll be talking about educational uses of Twitter, I'll answer an email, and I'll probably wind up making fun of myself as the day goes on. See this right here? Right there? It's a Twitter theme. Let's get started. Have you ever thought to yourself, my students don't exist in the same world as me? Well, you might not be far from the truth. Our students live in a world that's saturated by social media, and to some, their world is social media. You may not think of magazines, movies, TV shows, and even many websites as social, but to your students, each of these media has evolved a unique social component. The same can be said for most of their daily lives. This is except for their time in the classroom in most cases. Now at this point you may be saying, good riddance. My classroom is not the place for social media. But step back, take a moment, and ask yourself, why not? Is there a place for social media in your classroom? My answer is yes. So let's take a look at one particular form of social media that your students are familiar with, and that's Twitter. Now, if you're not familiar with what Twitter is actually a microblogging site that allows users to share their thoughts, photos, links, and lives, all in 140 characters or less. These microblogs or tweets often come with a hashtag in order to identify the topic of their fascination. For instance, I just came from a conference where the hashtag was ELI 2012. I'll be going to another conference in a couple of weeks where the hashtag will be AA 2012. And feel free to search for those tags to see what people are tweeting about during the event, either past or present as it's happening. Twitter is a free service that allows users to follow people or topics that they are interested in, as well as contribute to the conversations through the use of these hashtags. Now, tweeters can be followed if others deem their content acceptable or worthwhile. It's very easy to set up an account, so feel free to head on over to twitter.com to start. I normally advise folks to create a Twitter account and just follow along the conversations give yourself 6 months or so. And during that time, something will be said where you just feel like you have to contribute to the conversation. But the question really remains, why use Twitter in the classroom? Twitter can be used to share articles, sites, and your thoughts with your students throughout the week and outside of the classroom. So in this scenario, your students follow you, the professor. Another meaningful way to use Twitter would be to ask students to look for outside information and share that with the class throughout the week. Here, the students and professor would follow each other. Students could use it to pose questions to the professor or class for further insight or help. Here, each student would tag their post with a particular hashtag, and the other students or the professor would follow a particular hashtag and provide answers or clarifying thoughts. So your next question probably is, how does Twitter affect student engagement and success? Dr. Ray Junko, who's an associate professor and director of disability services in the Department of Academic Development and Counseling at Lock Haven University, is at the helm of a study to answer that very question. And here I'll quote him. We conducted a controlled study of the effects of interacting Twitter into a first-year seminar course on student engagement. And we found that the experiment group had significantly increased engagement and significantly higher semester GPAs than the control group. So to view his early findings, I'll post a link to that on my main blog site. So I hope that these are just the beginnings of how Twitter could be used in the classroom. I'm interested in how would you use this technology in your class? Or have you used Twitter already? If so, how? Please share your insights with me and hopefully my audience as this blog grows and becomes a resource for you at the university. What I'd like to do next is actually answer an email that an instructor recently sent me on how to incorporate Twitter into their blog as a way of conjoining the two different social technologies into their classroom so it was easier for their peers and also for their students to follow them on Twitter. Today's email comes from Paul. It reads, "Hi Matt." Hi Paul. "Thanks for the seminar last week on blogging." You're very welcome, Paul. "I need your help updating my blog. I'd hoped to be able to update it myself, but alas, my attempts to add my Twitter feed and not just the link have been unsuccessful. Can you help me out? Sincerely, Paul." Absolutely. I'll help Paul and the rest of us out to import a Twitter feed to your blog. And I'm going to be dealing specifically with our WordPress blog, but this process is fairly universal for how to import a Twitter feed into your blog. So I hope everybody will be able to get a little bit of use out of it. So the first thing to keep in mind whenever I'm working on my blog, I like to have a couple different tabs open. One, I like to have kind of the live, what's the published blog feed, and this is what we're looking at right here. You can see my blog. You can see that there is no Twitter right here. So I'm not pulling any shenanigans on you. It's not preloaded. One thing I do like to do before I'm working on the blog or before I'm doing this Twitter is I'm already logged in. So if you need to go ahead and log into the URBlogs website, that's fine. Feel free to put me on pause. My feelings won't be hurt. Come back to me when you're ready. Please do come back. Okay? I'm going to assume you're back now. Okay. So the next phase is to log into Twitter. Go ahead and put me on pause if you need to. I'll be here. Once you are logged into Twitter, you might not be able to easily see, but if you click on this little shadow person up here, you'll notice that, there's my name. I am logged in. My avatar is very friendly, and he's waving at you saying hello. Down here on the left-hand side towards the bottom, you may see this little box that most of us probably ignore when you logged into Twitter because it's kind of boring and that's not what you're really there for. But this time, we are. Go ahead and click on Resources, and we're going to want a widget. Now this point may be a little bit confusing to people because we're dealing with a blog. It gives you two options. One is for our website and one is for Facebook. Now we know we're not dealing with Facebook in this case, but the code that it'll give you for a website will work just fine for us in a blog. So go ahead and click on that My Website. The most popular and most common widget is this profile widget, and that one will work just fine for us. Now once you get here, make sure that your Twitter account name, your username is there. You have a couple different preferences if you want to play around with, you're welcome to. Most common are the number of tweets. If you're a very active tweeter, you may want to increase that number. I'm not all that active, so I'm going to keep mine at the default 4. You can play around with the appearance. You can change the colors if you'd like. I'm going to leave mine again at the default. Now this Dimensions tab is important for us because here at UR, our templates for our WordPress image are a little bit different. So we're going to need to mess with the dimensions because if you keep them at the default here, it won't fit. It'll actually cut off some of your tweets. So we want to keep this at 225 instead of 250. Okay. The height at 300 is just fine, especially if you're only dealing with 4 tweets. We're going to go ahead and click on this Finish and grab code. Now you'll notice once you left click in this area, it automatically selects it. You don't have to worry about anything. Go ahead and right click and then left click on copy. So now this is saved to your clipboard. Go ahead and go back to your other tab of your WordPress, your UR WordPress dashboard. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do this, and feel free to use whichever one makes the most sense for you. I'll quickly go through 2 different ways. One would be creating a Twitter page. So this is something that somebody who's landing on your page to visit your blog wouldn't necessarily see right away. This will work if you're not a very active tweeter or you want to keep your tweets separate from your blog. So go ahead and click on blog or page and then add new. Go ahead and give it a title. I'm going to call mine Twitter feed. Now this next part is very important when you're pasting in HTML code. Some people by default will be in the visual editor, and you can tell that because it'll have familiar icons like bold, italic, strike through, center, align, etc. What we want is to be in the HTML editor mode. So if you click on that, you'll notice that those familiar functions are no longer there, or at least they don't look the same. Once you're in HTML, left click in this text box, you'll see that the cursor starts blinking, so you know that that's the active tab. Right click, and then go ahead and left click on paste. All that fun HTML code that may not mean much to you is now there. I like to always save a draft just as a best practice, and then go ahead and publish. Now I'll show you what that looks like in a second. The other option would be, if you are an active tweeter, let's say, to have a visitor to your blog be able to see your blog and your Twitter feed at the same time. And you can easily do that with a widget. You want to left click over here on the left hand side dashboard on Appearance, and then Widgets. Now you can search for a couple hours in here and you might see that there is no such thing as a Twitter feed widget, and that's because we don't have one on our UR WordPress server. But we can get around that quite easily by doing a text or arbitrary HTML widget instead. So go ahead and left click and drag this up here to the top and then release it. This is the widget column. You can go ahead and give it a title if you want. You can change this at any point. You can remove it if you want. I'm again going with the very descriptive and very simple Twitter feed description. Once you decide on a name, go ahead and left click in that text box again. You'll know that it's in the right place because the cursor will start blinking at you. Right click and then left click on paste. That HTML code is there again. Go ahead and click save, and you'll notice that a little icon of the swirly circle, there it goes. That means it's successfully saved. Go ahead and left click on this little arrow here and it minimizes it. Now again, if you're an active tweeter, you may want that to be prominent on your blog. So I'm going to go ahead and left click and drag this up to the top, and I'll show you why I did that in a second. Okay, so now your website, your blog is saved. This third tab is my blog. You'll notice that there's nothing here. It's not all that different until I reload or refresh. And right away, you'll see that the page is different in two significant ways. The first is that, the Twitter feed is over here on the right-hand side. And again, you can adjust that if you don't want it to be on the top. You can drag and drop it to below some other sections if you'd like. The other option, I had the Twitter page. The home is the blog. The about is there by default. And this third page is a Twitter feed. And this looks very much like a static website. So you can feel free to put images in here, descriptions about yourself, what types of events you've gone to, what hashtags you like to follow on Twitter, those types of things, and that will appear here. Now I know it looks a little bit weird because we have a Twitter feed on the left and a Twitter feed on the right, but chances are you would only have one or the other and not both, although I could foresee a couple situations where both might be called for if you were using it as a teaching and learning tool, for example. Thank you for joining me on my inaugural episode of my video blog. It's still pretty much in beta, but it's a public beta test, so I welcome your feedback and any comments that you might have or suggestions. Also, if you have any questions about Twitter or using Twitter in your classroom, I welcome those as well. So feel free to contact me either as a comment or a response to this posting or on my blog proper, or send me an email. Feel free to do that. Look me up on campus if you need to. Give me a call. I'm here to help you. Now, if you're not familiar, or if you're not a big Twitter fan, Twitter is a microblog. Does Micro have a Twitter account?